And so the point that I'm making is that you're trading off of a mathematical formula. Literally, you're trading, and this mathematical formula, what technical analysis does is it gets into the collective mind of the market. In other words, every tick, every uptick and every downtick is information. That information is accumulated and mathematical principles are applied to it. There are actual patterns that emerge, that repeat themselves over and over and over again, that you can identify with mathematical formulas or with these visual price patterns. But the problem is that there's no mathematical formula that can get into the mind of the individual traders who actually are driving prices up or offering them lower. But if you don't know that, you somehow or another, if you're trading on a smaller time frame, and you get a little pullback right here, okay? And based on that pullback, your methodology says, okay, it's time to buy. And you do. And you do it just before this hedge fund manager comes in and starts driving the price up. See, you're going to think that the reason why you won is because that your mathematical formula told you what was happening next. And that was the reason why it happened. What I'm saying to you now is that there almost isn't any reason that you could come up with, whether you won or lost, that would correspond to what really happened in the market. You hear what I just said? There's almost no reason that you will come up with to put on a trade that will ever correspond with the actual reason why the market went up or the market went down, other than the fact that there was an imbalance in conviction between buyers and sellers. Because the people who do this will not tell you unless it's in their best interest to do so. And the people who report it in the news agencies, they don't know either. They're making it up. They make up the reasons because they sound reasonable. They are paid to sound reasonable. And there's no way to verify what it is that they say.
Or to disprove what they say.
That's right. There's no way. The only people who can do it are the people who actually made the trades. The only people who know for sure what's going to happen next are the ones who are willing to make it happen. You see, we'll put on a trade and find ourselves in a nice monster little winner here and think, oh man, my methodology, it is just fantastic. And then the next time you get the same signal and then you don't get anything. Not only that, it's a loser. You think, oh, now you feel betrayed. You think your methodology let you down. Your methodology wasn't designed to tell you what's going to happen next on a trade-by-trade basis. No technical methodology is. That's where your expectations are not in line with the reality of the situation. That's why it's so easy to make mistakes. It's because you're expecting something from your methodology that just doesn't exist. It just doesn't. It never did. On a trade-by-trade basis. They will tell you what will happen. Let's say, I don't want to use the words to happen next. They'll tell you what will happen over a series of trades on a percentage basis. This particular pattern will emerge X number of times, and when it does, there's a higher probability of this happening than that. If I limit my risk when I take the trade, and my profit potential is at least 1 or 2 or 3 times greater than what I need to risk, then over a series of trades, I will be a consistent winner. That's what trading is all about, guys, as a passive technical trader. Unless you're doing this other stuff, I just said it right then and there. I said it all right then and there. There was a guy that came to me for consultations several years ago. He was he wasn't really anything. He was a guy that he was a guy that lost a lot of people's money. He was basically what he was. He was a really good analyst, I should say. Really, he was an excellent analyst. In fact, as far as market analysis was concerned, he was probably one of the best analysts I'd ever worked with. But the problem is that he had some really, as far as executing his trades, and let's put it this way, he was, let's say, on the arrogant side. That's being nice. And So when he put on a trade, he just thought that that was it. You know, the market was going to do what he thought it was going to do, period. So he was the kind of guy who, you know, he went through all of his relatives' money with trading accounts and his friends and that sort of thing, and he was getting to the point where he was really exasperated. So he came to me for consultations, and basically after listening to him, I said, hey, you know what? Why don't you do something, get paid for something that you're good at, and, you know, and stop trying to, you know, stop losing other people's money, and go get a job as an analyst. Just get paid to be an analyst, not as a trader. And so he did. He got a job with one of the major clearing firms at the Chicago Board of Trade as one of their analysts for their brokers and that sort of thing. And the president, or actually the chairman of the board, his son was actually the president. Chairman had retired. He was an old-time grain trader, soybean trader, and you know, made his money in the 40s and the 50s and that sort of thing, and traded pit-style trading. In other words, something that I talked about early this morning, I'm not going to get into, but in any case, he didn't make direction-related trades. And so he was really mystified with the idea of technical analysis. I mean, he really was. He was literally mystified with the idea that you could basically predict prices based on chart patterns and that sort of thing. So he thought, well, you know what? I'm going to sit down with this guy and, you know, this star analyst here that we have in the firm now, and find out what this crap is all about. Basically, is the way he thought about it. And so he's sitting down with him for a few days, and it got to a point where one day, you know, the soybean market was. The soybean market was basically, you know, trading in a range, about the middle of a range between what the analysts projected as the high of the day. Not just the high of the day and the low of the day, okay? And so the market drifted around, you know, like, you know, maybe did a little bit of close to a test of the high, and it's coming down to the low, and they're both sitting there and they're both watching it right now. And the chairman of the board, the soybean trader, old soybean trader, says, okay, so this is going to be the low of the day right here, right? The guy said, yep, that's it. Gets that price, it's the low of the day. Low of the day. And the guy looked at him and he said, that's bull. And he picked up the phone, which had a direct line to the soybean pit. He said, sell 10 million beans at the market. Now, 10 million beans is 2,000 contracts because they trade in 5,000 bushel increments. So he hit the market at that moment with 2,000 sell orders, okay, which immediately drove the price down 10 cents, which basically is $1 million trade, by the way. Driving the price, of course, if he'd have sold all of them at this price and bought them all back at this price, but there was an average price down. But from here to here is $1 million on 2,000 contracts. And then after the price dropped, he looked at him and said, hey, if I can do that, anybody can do that. If I can do that, anybody can do it. Now think about the implications of what I just said. If you remember back in that survey that we just took a little while ago, and I said it only takes one trader somewhere in the world to negate the positive outcome of your edge? Oh, gee, what if you were one of the people that bought right here? How many people did it take to mess up your trade? Just one. Just one person. That's all. It's usually more than one, but that's all it takes is one. You guys starting to get the idea? This kind of stuff is going on all of the time. As a matter of fact, when prices move, this is usually the reason why. When I was at Merrill Lynch, and for many years, even when I was teaching, you know, material in the psychology of trading, I didn't really include a lot of this stuff because I just sort of took it for granted that people understood it and knew it. You know, and the reason why I took it for granted is because I guess I learned it so early in my trading career that it just, you know, it was self-evident to me. But it was self-evident because here I was at Merrill Lynch and I had access to a squawk box. Now our squawk boxes were open phone lines to the various pits in both Chicago and New York, meaning we had Merrill Lynch representatives in each of those pits that as buy and sell orders would come in, they would tell us who was buying and who was selling. What houses, what manufacturers, what big accounts, what big traders, if they could. In other words, if they had access to the information, they would tell us who was buying, you know, and maybe who was even taking the other side of their orders if they could determine it. So it's like you had a very intimate, it was like you had this sort of intimate connection with what was really going on. Now, at the same time, when I was doing my own technical analysis, I would do my equations, because we didn't have computers back then. Of course, you could do the Hewlett-Packard handheld thing, but I didn't do that. I did all my equations all my analysis on a spreadsheet, and I actually did all the calculations by hand. And I did it on purpose that way, so that I could get an intimate sense of how the actual mathematics of my signals, in other words, the actual calculations, the multiplications, the divisions, the subtractions, and what the final product was in terms of a signal, how it related to the actual market movement. And I found that there was no relationship, other than the fact that it would identify patterns where the signals would work sometimes and sometimes they wouldn't. But the point is that there wasn't any relationship between this fixed mathematical formula and the people who were buying and selling at that moment and the reasons why they were doing it. There was none at all. But not only that, here's what really shocked me.